pretend I'm something I'm not.
This is the pet. It is a carved wooden turtle.
Which, when I told him I was bringing him a pet from Africa, his eyes went wide. He stopped talking. Katie got upset with me. And I said, it's made out of wood. It's not alive.
See, with him, you just learn to sometimes assume the worst.
I can't bring in animals from Africa. It's against the law.
I didn't know that.
Now you do. Turning your Bibles, please, to Psalms chapter 96. Well, I try to remember if I have notes. Oh, I do. Okay, I remember. I have to turn this on. Is it on? Cover keeps coming up. According to this, if it's red is showing, is that on? Oh, now it's on. It vibrates. All right. Psalm chapter 96. Oh, sing to the Lord a new song. Sing to the Lord, all the earth. Sing to the Lord. Bless his name. Proclaim the good news of his salvation from day to day. Declare his glory among the nations and his wonders among all peoples. For the Lord is great and greatly to be praised. He is to be feared above all gods. For all gods of the peoples are idols. But the Lord made the heavens. Honor and majesty are before him. Strength and beauty are in his sanctuary. Our gracious Heavenly Father, help me explain what your word says and how we can pray for our brothers and sisters in a small country on the other side of the ocean. In Christ's name, amen. I was going to preach this message in Africa, but I learned a long time ago that when you're a guest speaker and there are a lot of things taking place, don't ever presume that you're speaking just because you're on the schedule. All sorts of things can happen. So I had written this message a long time ago because I was concerned that the church in Liberia has a very poor habit. They're singing from hymnals that they received from the United States that were printed in the 60s and 50s. So they're singing songs that are at least 150 years old. The newest ones are 50 to 80 years old. And I said, why are you not writing new songs? And the response would be, well, it's not in our hymnal. And I said, well, interesting that a psalmist would say, sing to the Lord a new song, and do so repetitively throughout the Psalms. Keeps talking about singing new songs, which to a Baptistic congregation is on the edge of heresy because you're asking people to change their music, which is dangerous. So that was my sermon. I was going to explain it in great detail and explain why it was important, because I met people who were prolific writers, both in prose, poems, and otherwise, and I thought if I had asked them to write a song, I think they could give me the song lyrics. So the next thing is you just have to find a melody. But I didn't get to preach that. So you get the summarized version. That was the summarized version. I sat in a church. It was a church plant in the Jake College multi-purpose building on a room designed to hold at least 150 people. And it was a wedding that was being held there. And then later the day after the wedding, I came for the church service, the church plant that was being there. And the pastor was very upset because he set up all the chairs like there are 150 people. Actually, we're about 300 people at the wedding. We just kept seated closer and closer together. And I walked in and I said, Isaac, did you set up all these chairs on purpose? He goes, well, yes, yesterday, it was full. And I go, yesterday was the wedding. His congregation had been working for about a week to put on the wedding and take down the wedding and do everything else. And I said, I'll be surprised if very many people come today. I would imagine they're as exhausted as I think they are. And he goes, well, they should come anyway. And I said, people are allowed to get tired. It happens. So these are the diploma covers that I carried out in my luggage. I was going to spread them through my luggage, and I got told very clearly, do not spread these apart in your luggage. Put all of them in one suitcase. Put all of the next item that you were carrying in another suitcase. Put all of the graduation hoods that the graduates were going to be receiving in your carry-on. And I was given a short list of other items to go in my carry-on. And I said, why do you want me to do this? And they said, well, if they don't come because that particular suitcase or tote doesn't arrive, no one knows. We're fine. We don't have to pick and choose. So please, don't pack like you normally would pack. packed for the worst extremity. In other words, packed so that if they don't show up, no one knows and we don't have to disappoint anybody. We can always hand out diplomas in plastic folders if we need to. So I had a long conversation with the dean of the school. I said, why did you put the year on the diploma cover? And he looks at me and he goes, that was a mistake. And I said, what did it cost? Because that's in gold leaf. I said, what did it cost to set those up to do it? Oh, it was like about $200 just for the setup cost. And then after that, they weren't very expensive. And I said, you do know now that the next time you do graduation, you can't use these. He said, yes, I'm quite aware of that. We shouldn't have done it that way. So that was the first thing that happened. So I will try to explain to you my trip with a group of photographs. Maybe. We sent money out for a roof or a ceiling. That's the ceiling. The ceiling is 3 layers. There's the outside or the inner shiny layer, there's an insulation layer, and then there's another layer on top of it, and that's up on the top. And as I was walking into the baccalaureate service, this is what I could see. First, the carved column, we're coming in a side door, and the second one, I'm up on the platform, and I kept being instructed to sit in one of the 3 great big huge pastoral or assistant pastor's chairs that are on the platform, and I said, no, that's for the senior pastor, I'm not sitting in his chair. Well, you should sit there. I said, no, he's coming, I'm not doing it. Now, I can tell you why I know he was coming. The program that had been printed said the baccalaureate service was starting at 10:30. The graduates and the faculty presumed it was starting at 10 because that's what they've been announcing for 2 weeks. The pastor thought we were on the 10:30 schedule, and he was planning on showing up about a half hour late when things got going. So John Saki is outside in line after chewing out all the graduates. Put your phones away, turn your phones off. We don't care if you take pictures, but put your phones in airplane mode. No one's phones are to be ringing in all the way until he got into the building. And I have several photographs because I kept sending them to John. What's this phone business? I thought we weren't supposed to have our telephones on. What are you doing? That was the president of the school and assistant pastor of the church calling the senior pastor of the church to ask him when he was going to show up for the service because we were starting in 3 minutes. And that's what happened. So about half hour into the program, the pastor walked in and slides into the chair next to me, and I looked at him and I said, saved your seat for you. It's Africa. The other Americans that were on the stage were a little perplexed. Why isn't the senior pastor there? And we just sort of smiled. Those are the graduates. The ladies are wearing black. We don't know why they all chose to wear black. They all look like widows. I couldn't understand what was going on. My wife said to me, why in the world are all the women in black in the front? I said, I have no idea. It was a style choice. I don't know anything about it. The men were told to show up in black slacks, white shirts, and a black tie. They all came as dressed. The women received no instructions other than to dress well. So that's the baccalaureate service. That lasted 2 hours. It was 85 to 90 degrees in the building. Humidity was 87%. That's the beginning. So we started outside at 9:30. We lined up, came inside the building. So 2 hours in that. The next one is at the graduation. I'm not going to show you all the graduation pictures. It was a low ceiling room of what will be the basement level or ground floor level of a church that's in the midst of a construction. But that man was one of my students, Ve Lacqui. He has an earned doctorate. When I first met him and I was told he had a doctorate, I was suspicious. I have met a lot of doctorates from diploma mills until I watched him summarize 3 very complicated meetings while taking notes on his iPad, and he had the essential point to everything that was spoken by every person in the room, boiled it down to the essential things, took out all the chaff in the remarks. And I started chuckling, and I said, well, you really do have a doctorate. That's rather evident in your studies. And I took that photograph for a person named Marilyn Vandenacker, a retired Baptist missions missionary who lives in northern Indiana. She and her husband taught him when he was at the Baptist College of Church Ministries in Monrovia in the 80s. And I said, I thought you should see this. A Liberian man, graduate of your program, earned doctorate in ministry, pastoring the largest Baptist church in the city of Monrovia, which also has a K-12 school and numerous other ministries, including church plants. And I said, he wore his doctrinal robes all day. He's a dear man. He's the beginning of the future. John Psaki is married to Grace Psaki. They've now been married this year. This is their 41st year of marriage. And I was invited to a special service the first Sunday after graduation at their church following a service where I'd been preaching in the morning service. And I go, why am I coming to your building at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and I'm supposed to be here for about an hour? Well, something is being arranged. Well, I understand it's being arranged, but why? It was for you. It was the thank you to you for your donation through the discretionary fund for the money you saw installed on that concrete roof. And Grace was delivering the thank you on behalf of all the women in the congregation. And John Psaki asked me, well, why didn't you include my picture? I said, well, you're the assistant pastor. I have a picture of the senior pastor, but she spoke more eloquently and shorter than the two ministers that were involved, so I thought her photograph was far more important than yours. Besides, if I understand it correctly, most of the cash in many congregations come from the women who tend to be the market-oriented people, and the husbands are working in jobs that pay less but have higher prestige. And he goes, well, that's true. I said, that's why I took Grace's picture. Do you have a problem? Should I call Grace and ask her if I don't have her permission to use her photograph? He goes, no, don't start that business, Timothy. I don't know which way I'm supposed to point this. Bill, the arch on the left is to a Christian school that's 225 miles away from Monrovia. The bluish, greenish sign in the middle says, if I can read it, Jake Memorial Baptist College, Tapi Annex, Mid-Baptist Mission, Tapita City, Nimba County, Republic of Liberia. That's what the RL means at the end. Road on the left is what roads look like in that part of the country until what I'm going to show you next happens. I was told in the faculty meeting following the graduation and baccalaureate, all 5 hours and 45 minutes of program, that I should go up country and go talk to the faculty of the second campus. And I go, why? What do you want me to do? You need to spend time with the faculty and explain things to them. I said, well, what am I explaining? You need to go over what accreditation means. Oh, gee, thank you. Why do I get to do this? Well, you're here, you're free. They need to hear it from a second opinion. They're going to hear it from the deans, and they're going to hear it from other people eventually, but please go up there and do this. So what would have been a 13-hour trip one way was 7.5 hours, and we were pulling in to onto the property that had been Baptist Missions property that dated back to about 1940. When the station was at the crossroads of two foot trails, and the only way you could get into that station was either walking for a few days or going in by airplane once they carved out an airstrip. There used to be a clinic, a Bible school or Bible Institute program, housing for students, housing for student families if the students were married, all up country in this little oasis in the middle of the rainforest. It literally was in the middle of nowhere. If I told you to look at a map of Liberia to go find this place, you wouldn't look for it. But they're building a road to it. In a minute, you're going to see what the road looks like. I sent pictures of the road to people who used to live there. None of them can believe me when I said the road's 25 miles away from the property and they're coming towards it. But first, the men on the left all received diplomas. The man who with his wife is on the right is named Peter Sekor, who's 70 years old. No, he's going to be 70 years old this year. He became a pastor at the start of the Civil War in 1990. His schooling was interrupted, and he was able to finish and complete a diploma instead of a degree, even though he pastored since 1990 to the present as a pastor. And the other three men are pastors and are all degree graduates of the program in Monrovia. Peter, it's hard to explain this. There's missionaries that are retired. One of them works with Bibles International. They live in Newaygo. They haven't spoken to Peter for about 30 years. When I'm on the property, I realized that I had a better cell signal up country in the middle of nowhere than I did in Monrovia. I said, let's try an experiment. So I called the Wittenbergers in Newaygo and I said, Jim, actually his name is James, but I call him Jim. James, how well can you hear me? Oh, fine, Tim, 5 by 5. All right, I'm going to try an experiment. Give me a few minutes. I'm going to call you back. I'm going to have you talk to somebody that's been asking about you since I've been in the country. Who? Peter and Martha Secor. No. Yes, we're really going to try this. What's the worst that can happen? It won't work, and you can tell me this was a silly idea. So we called. They spent about 20 minutes on the phone. They hadn't talked. They've been praying for each other all since the war, and they were delighted. Peter and his wife are in charge of the Tapeta Station. They take care of the buildings. They house missionaries if people come up to do short-term or interim visits, and they're responsible for all the property.
And how far is that satellite campus from it?
225 miles by road. Used to be in dry season between 12 to 14 hours, and if it rains, anywhere between 1 to 4 days. Now, once the pavement is finished, it'll be 7 hours. Let's show you what it looks like. So, Liberia, spelled in large letters in the middle, right above the I, the second I in Liberia, or a little bit to the north of it, is the town of Tapeta. There's many spelling variations. That's the one they choose. To get there, you leave Monrovia and you head towards the yellow. When you're almost to the yellow, you make a right turn, then you work your way back towards Tapeta. That's the way you get there. So every place on that map I know about. I've either flown over it or had pilots tell me, if we come down over in this area, I'm going to say the following 2 locations. Remember them and tell the Civil Air Patrol when they come looking for the airplane, that's where we might be found. Baptist Missions did ministry in the bottom half of the country and in the middle when there were missionaries there. Now there are only one missionary family in Monrovia. Most of the missionaries are gone. When the war came, the churches in Monrovia, half of the churches or more did not know how to function, and they lashed out at the mission agency on the wrong impression that the mission agency, for some reason, had thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars just waiting to help these churches who were isolated behind a war, because that's what many other large denominational missions were doing. They were offering thousands and thousands of dollars in place of missionaries. Baptist Missions didn't have that kind of money. So the missionaries said, the churches said, we don't want to work with the missionaries anymore, and severed relationships. And it took about 15 years for that to get resolved, part of which was ending a war, and part of it was spending a great deal of time with an awful lot of people to explain that our not sending you money wasn't because we were trying to steal the money from you. We were not sending you money because we had nothing to send. Oh, well, that's different. That's not what we thought. And I said, no, it's not, but that's what you understood. Well, that's Liberia. On a good day, when the roads are dry and a bulldozer has gone through, that's what you see out your windshield. It's a washboard road. It's laterite, which means it's something that's made out of iron ore. And if it's dry and not too dusty, you can easily travel 25 miles an hour until you hit a ditch. The Chinese have decided to pave the principal roads in Liberia. So they're digging out the laterite down to clay, then they're packing down the clay on the right, putting down gravel on top of the clay, and putting some pitch on top of the gravel. The gravel is crushed stone, and it's about 8 inches deep with re-rod mesh in the middle to hold the gravel in place. Then they're putting down about between 4 4 to 6 inches of asphalt paving, which is crowned, and on the sides of the road there are spaces for tropical rainwater to run off. And then before they put the lines down, it looks like this. And I had to get this picture because we are literally where the line was just going to be applied. That's what the way the road looks like. Now, I sent this to people who used to live there. Nobody believes me. They're like, where did you take this picture? I tell them exactly where I was. They're like, that's impossible. No, that's not possible. Oh, other things that happen when you go to Africa. You go to weddings. Joel and I were talking about timing at a wedding. So if I told you the wedding starts at 2 o'clock, when would you expect the groom to be ready to go? At what time? Here. What would you expect? You have no expectations. Good thing you're all married. Most people would expect the groom to be a little bit early and the bride to be approximately right on time. Well, the groom was there 15 minutes early. The bride showed up after 45 minutes. I'd received a text message from Kenya, literally, telling me, Tim, do not presume to be on time. The brides are perpetually late. It's a tradition. The bride makes the groom wait. And she did. And we all did. And then about an hour after she showed up, we had a wedding. And for some reason, they've started this tradition where all pastors that are in the room all take place in performing the wedding. So I got asked 4 times by some very close friends, and I kept saying, I hardly know the people. I'm not performing this wedding just because I'm here in the room. I'll take pictures, ask him. He's been here longer, let him participate. And so that was the wedding of Daniel and Rachel. Daniel graduated with a degree in theology, a degree in education. He's finishing a degree in mathematics at the University of Liberia. So he'll be qualified to teach mathematics from K through 12, possibly early college, and then eventually he'll start seminary. The potential is that he will be a professor of Jake in about another 6 years. Picture on the left, I'm standing with my back against the back wall of the upper story of the new building of the Jake campus. There's a white guy wearing a blue shirt with stripes halfway down the length of the building. On the right side, I zoomed in on him so you can see Mark Shepard. He went and stood in the middle. I went to the end to take a picture. That's the upper story. And I kept asking, why are these reinforced concrete columns up here and posts? What's going on? Oh, well, they put those in case we wanted to add another story. And I said, we don't have money to take care of what we have now. Where in the world are they going to get? And they said, builders put it in. So potentially they may become dividers and divide that space into other things. But as of right now, that building is reinforced enough to put a tank up there. Am I not pointing this in the right direction? I think there's more. John Saki's in red. Wife Grace is on his right. The guy next to John Saki is named John as well. That's my driver. And John Saki, for the last 2 years, have been talking about Big John. Not Little John, referring to himself, because he always refers to himself as a small boy if I'm in the country, because I was his professor and also his employer. He goes, well, I'll be a small boy while you're in the country, and Big John is going to take care of you. And I go, Big John isn't big. Why is Big John called Big John? Finally, I asked John, the driver, not Saki, the minister, and I go, why in the world are you being called Big John? He goes, well, it has to do with my other job. Well, what's your other job? Oh, I'm the president of the National Transportation Union for all drivers in the country of Liberia. I've had that job now for quite a while. Oh, that explains why every time I get to the airport, everybody is basically bowing and scraping when you walk into the room. And he goes, yeah, it does have that effect on certain people. Like all the people that want you to pay them money to have you take them instead of me. Go somewhere. And then some of John's kids and his daughter, Kutu, who's in the green dress, who is a nurse, wants to be a nurse anesthetist, and told me, well, Mr. Boss, we got a small problem. There's only one hospital in the country that teaches anesthesiology for nurses. You cannot get to that hospital without a recommendation from the hospital you're at. And I said, so, how much money does your hospital want to give you the recommendation to go to the other hospital to get trained. And she goes, yes, that's the problem. They won't come up with a number yet. So she said, at one point while I was there, she was talking about joining the Army. And I said, join the Army? Fine, go in as an officer. You have a college degree, you're a trained nurse. You should go in as an officer in the medical corps. Well, Liberian government doesn't have a medical corps, so she would go in as a college-educated private. We both agreed together that probably was not a smart idea. She's far too smart for that, so she's not going to do that. So she and one of her younger brothers said, Mr. Boss, you have to take a selfie, since I had only taken one other one in my life. So they made me take a selfie before I left. Extremely bright woman. That might be the last one. That is. You can turn it off, Joe. What did I do in Liberia? I don't have pictures of what I did. I sat at a table, and they took out pieces of paper. First, it was Post-it notes. I brought a bunch of Post-it notes with me. There's Post-it notes all across the table. I go, what do you want me to do? We're going to rewrite all the curriculum. We would like you to adjust this. I said, what's the problem? Well, when the Education Commission was here, they told us we have a small problem. We have way too many hours in our associate's degree. How many semester hours do you have in your associate's degree? 84. 84. Oh, okay. How many hours do you have in your bachelor's degree? 120. I said, well, that's the wrong proportion. That's exactly what they said. What do you think we should have? I said, I think you should have 60. If you have 120 in the undergraduate program, then you should have 60 for an associate's. Yes, but we have a problem. If we only take 60, then we have to eliminate 24. Which 24 do we cut? And I said, well, every program that doesn't start with 200 or 100, you don't teach. Well, no, but that's not the way we've done it. I said, you've done it that way in the past because you were preparing people for a 4-year program once you got accreditation. You have the accreditation, so why are you preparing people for something that you already have? Why don't you make your associate's degree a basic associate's degree? Well, then it takes away our flexibility. And I said, why do you not want to be clear on what you teach in an associate's degree? Well, what's the importance? I said, if you teach a basic associate's degree for someone that only will do an associate's degree, you're not training them to be pastors or higher level school teachers. You're giving them an associate's degree education. If you have a fixed schedule, then you have a fixed planning for all your professors, and you're not trying to figure out every semester who's going to teach what next semester. Oh, well, that would be very nice. If we could plan out 2 years ahead, that would be wonderful. Barring illness or death, we can easily arrange these things. I said, well, then you have to make a decision. So I spent 3 days constantly asking the question, all right, Mark, you have a course that's called Survey of the Bible, and then you have Old Testament survey and New Testament survey. Why? Well, Survey of the Bible, it teaches all this material. I said, well, don't you cover that in New Testament or Old Testament survey? Well, actually not. Well, then why are they all called surveys? Well, Survey of the Bible actually is an introduction to the Bible. Well, then why don't you call it Introduction to the Bible and take the word survey out? Did you not get comments on the fact that too many of your courses sound like the same course? They're just farther down there? Well, yeah, they mentioned that. I said, well, they have a point. They are extremely confusing. And which Bible courses do you want your associate's degree students to have? Well, we want them to have everything. Why? Well, that's because we've always done it that way. Why? Well, and I go, so they're like, that's why I got involved. I was asked to basically do exactly what I did. For some reason, there is this understanding across the world that Tim Boss asks questions. I don't know where they get these things. So we went through, and now they have a solid associate. I said, listen, after the first year, if it doesn't work, you can always modify it. It's not like we're carving these in tablets of stone and we're coming down from certain mountains in the middle of the Middle East. We're not doing it that way. We're simply setting up a program so you can do planning. Oh, that's right. I said, and since you rewrite things routinely, well, then you can rewrite course names. But let's get the 100s and the 200s. They were offering a 300 course, requiring it for sophomores, and I go, well, why are you requiring that? Well, we always did it that way because that was preparatory to these courses. And I said, but you don't have that program anymore. You're not doing a diploma. You're doing an associate's degree and a bachelor's degree. Then I had to go up. Why did I go up country? Well, when I got up there, We had heard while the students were down there, the professors who had just graduated, that they were writing their own courses, except they'd been given the courses to teach and the materials to teach, and that was becoming to be an issue. Like, what do you mean you're writing your own courses? Well, we're not teaching 4 days a week. We're only going to teach 3 days a week, but we're still going to do everything, but with less amount of time. And I was getting literally instant messages on my phone during a faculty meeting. Tim, I think it would be a really good idea for you to leave tomorrow, go up country with these guys, and figure out what in the world is going on up there and start asking questions. So I went up country so I could see roads, and then I had long conversations. What does accreditation mean? So now I will quote to you a course I had in seminary. Accreditation means you fit within the system that your country is in regarding education. It's not a moral question, it's just a practical question. Your country has a Ministry of Education, it has certain requirements. You have a degree program that is accredited and will be recognized by countries throughout all of West Africa if you follow the rules. If you say you're following the rules, but you don't follow the rules, and upon investigation they find out you're not following the rules, the second campus doesn't lose the accreditation. No, the main campus loses accreditation because they have authorized you and you're breaking the rules. Do you want to be accredited or not? Yes, we want to be accredited. Then you have to do exactly. Yes, but we have, I said, I know you have a wonderful schedule and maybe it can be adapted, but it can't stay the way it is. Well, we would like to teach computers. Okay, why? Well, we'll get more students for computers. Will they stay through the entire program, not mess up their lives in immorality, keep a clean testimony in a local church, and stay for all the other courses just because they want to study computers? Probably not. So why are we teaching computers? By the way, how many of your students have a computer? 1 in 50. But they don't have 50 students. 1 in 50 people has a computer. So you're going to teach a course for someone to use a computer who has no access to a computer, won't see one wherever they get hired, but they're taking computers because it's the favorite course. Yes. And by the way, Tim, yes, can you raise money so we can buy some used computers? And I go, no. Well, why not? I said, I can't justify raising money for computers for a course that's not going to be allowed. Well, why would it not be allowed? I said, was it approved by the campus in Monrovia? Well, no, they don't understand. And I said, until you can get it approved by them and they offer a course, you can't offer it. Oh, that's what accreditation means. And to make you understand, it wasn't that Tim Boss was telling this. After I stopped talking, John Stockey started over and did the whole thing again. And we did it individually with each of the professors. We did it together. We did it in the morning. We did it in the evening. We did it in the following. Until we left the property, all we talked about was accreditation and the fact that they have to do one little detail. They have to follow the rules or they lose accreditation. Not just for them, for everybody. And so Nancy Shepard is up there right now teaching a course in phonics. Called me on the phone. I'm still amazed that I can get cell phone calls from the middle of nowhere. And she goes, we have a problem. We have a student that's enrolled as a freshman up country. Yes. High school graduate, teaching high school, cannot read. Oh, how much did he pay for his diploma? Well, yes, that's part of the problem. What can he read? We think he can read some parts of Liberian English, but he cannot read a 1,000 vocabulary list for simple English. I said, well, what do you need? She goes, I think what we need to do is develop a curriculum, like a preparatory curriculum, and we teach reading all summer long, but we need to get the books that adults want to read, not children's books, but adult books written for new English readers to teach people how to read and have them read 500 to 1,000 pages a summer so that by the time they start college, they're actually ready to do the college work instead of saying, well, I don't actually know how to read. So he's in a phonics class learning how to read. And he's a high school graduate who's teaching. That's the educational system in Liberia. It was described as Liberians are playing school. They build buildings with government monies. They get salaries for private institutions that take over the government buildings, and they teach Nothing. But the students pay tuition. The parents have to raise the money for the tuition. Students graduate. They get really nice uniforms. Everything looks wonderful, except for the fact that there's no content. Jake has an unusual reputation. Its graduates actually know the material and are sought after before they're graduated. Every one of them is actually working as a teacher, and the graduation is simply, their schools say, if you get these degrees, we can pay you more because now you're within the accreditation. That's what I was doing. I didn't know I was going to be doing this. But when I go out, they're like, we want you to come out for graduation. We have some other things we'd like you to do. And I still think they're cowards. They wouldn't tell me. That was curriculum. So what's needed? They need money for books, textbooks, workbooks, instruction books, teaching manuals, books for the courses that they can use paper on. I said, what do these books cost? So they showed me. They go, hardcover book, brand new, stitched binding, 650 pages, $12. $12? Where do you have a $12? And they're handing me the book. They go, what do you think? This is $12? Well, I would have paid $12 for this in the 60s. This is an excellent book. This should be about 40 bucks. Yes, it's from a Mennonite mission. They'll print them to order. The hardcover books are shipped in from outside, but a hardcover book, $12. They don't have money for books like this. Workbooks that are done there. Workbooks designed in English, designed to build English up, build math up, build all the things up so that by the time a person graduates, not only do they know the material, they have all the tools in their possession to teach it anywhere they go in the country. They don't have money for books, so they need a curriculum budget. They need an early reader's budget. And they need short and long-term missionary help. And that was the last part that I was doing when I was there. Constantly telling missionaries, you need to be talking to Baptist missions. You need to be explaining these needs. Well, yes, I don't think they're listening to us because we haven't said anything in anymore. I said, I know exactly what's on the website about Liberia. I get mad at it every time I look at it because you're not, well, we're busy. I said, this is more important than what you're doing. Why? Because it takes a while, usually, for a missionary to get from A to B. It takes a few years. And you're not asking now, and you need them now, so you should be asking now, looking for the future. Well, we're not ready for them. Well, they're not going to come it's very rare. I have an unusual story. In 1987, I graduated from seminary. I was preparing to leave in the autumn of 1987 to teach at the Baptist College of Church Ministries in Monrovia. And I received what was called a ham radio phone patch. And the ham radio call was, can you come to Liberia faster? Maybe. What do you mean? Well, like tomorrow. I said, well, I do need a passport. And I know I have to get a yellow fever shot or I can't get a visa. And I know I have to get a visa. And at that time, there was a consulate in Chicago, so I could go to Chicago to get the visa. And I don't have any support. Let's try for 8 weeks. And about 8 weeks later, I arrived in Liberia feeling like I'd gotten shot out of a cannon. I said, that's unusual. Most people don't have that happen. Most people take a while. You should be asking for these things. So you need to pray that the missionaries will understand that by requesting things now doesn't mean they necessarily get them now, but they're doing the preparation work. I have to go down to Appalachian Bible College in, I think it's West Virginia, to talk to a librarian, son of a friend of mine, to say, David, I need books. I need these kinds of books. I can get them shipped there. This is what I need. What sources can you tell me? And by the way, David, we need some of your students to show up as short-termers. Who do you have? Who do you recommend? What's going on? I'm looking through their catalog and I go, David Dunkerton. Dunkerton? Nah, can't be the same Dunkerton. Looks like his father. Look at his name. Oh, it's the same Dunkerton. Yes, I know him. We served together at Bibles International. Tom Dunkerton was a IBM exec. God called him to ministry. He went to seminary, became a pastor, and he used to build IBM computers back when they had mainframes, and then tried to apply engineering thoughts to theology. So he had a very organized courses that drove me crazy because I go, Thomas, no one thinks like this. Well, we do at IBM, but you're not in New York State anymore. You're in Michigan. Well, I know. They're very confused over here. It's very bad. So I have to go down to West Virginia and go talk to Appalachia Bible College, go start talking to schools to start getting used books. But the major need is money for new books, money to get them going, and then the money for the coursework that needs to be taught so that high school graduates who cannot read will learn how to read when they enroll in college. So I spent 3 weeks sweating, asking questions, asking the same questions over and over again, helping transport graduation gowns from one side to the other. That's the picture I sent when I was there of the graduation gowns on the wooden rack in the back of the pickup so we could get them over to where the graduates were. And then they kept trying to put me in a graduation gown, and I said, I've taught one course in this whole course. I'm not wearing a graduation gown, but I will make certain that your graduates actually look like graduates by putting their caps on the correct direction, by teaching the girls that no, the hat does not go on, it's not a fashion statement, you don't wear a mortarboard on the back of your head. I really don't care if that's where you want to put it, you will move it or you're not going to graduate in this ceremony. Why? Your hat has to be level, parallel to the ground. Well, that's very uncomfortable. I said, it's not supposed to be comfortable. It's tradition. It has absolutely nothing to do with reality. The tassel, yes, does not go down the middle of your back. None of you people are donkeys. You have to take the tassel and put it on the side, and eventually you're going to move it over to this side. But it's in my eyes. I didn't say I was comfortable. Did I say any of this was going to be fun? No. Listen, you're not going to go in that auditorium until you get past me, and I won't let you go in until you look like you're a graduate of a college. The students were easy, because next I had to deal with the faculty. Gentlemen, nothing personal, but a hood that you're wearing around your neck is not to be designed to wear around your lower shoulders like a set of wings. You're not angels. This is designed to be uncomfortable. This is the only bit of bling you have in your entire costume. You're wearing black uniforms with black hats and a bright, colorful hood if you wear it the right way. Well, what does that mean? Well, look, guys, on the back of it, you see this string here with a loop on the end of it? Yes. Fold this part back, you'll see there's a large button. Hook this loop to the button. Why do we do that? So it won't slide down your shoulders. You won't look like a group of angels trying to practice for a 5-year-old play at church on Christmas time. You're not going to do this. Your doctorate's in theology. Dress like it. Now, see all this color in the back? Yes. Pop it up. Why? It's the only thing you have on your uniform that looks nice. Why do we do this? I don't know. Talk to the English. It's their traditions. I don't agree with the traditions. It's just here. Like somebody said to me, why are you doing this? I said, they are going to look like graduates. So they gave me a present. I'm going off camera when I do this, Joe. I'll come back. I have show and tell. Maybe. The commencement ceremonies program. I have a copy. You may look at it. You can't take it. It even has biographies of all the students, one of whom refused to graduate because there was a misprint in one of the editions. They only put in one of his 2 degrees. And so he said to his dean of theology, I can't graduate. I absolutely refuse to participate in this program. They didn't put in the right degrees for me. And we're like, Abu, it's a mistake. What did I do in Monrovia? Well, one day, we're going downtown and we're looking for a shop that has, we thought, a nice coffee machine. Actually, they had a nice printing press. They made these for us in 20 minutes. They're 4-color. All the pictures are here. The wedding. Here's the wedding program. The baccalaureate program with the wrong hours. And a picture of the graduates taken while the dean of theology was across the street moving his car because he was double parked throughout the 3-hour ceremony. His wife said, why are you not in this photograph? He goes, dear, I told you, when I went to move the car and I came back, it was done. I didn't care that I was not in the picture. The picture was taken, everybody was there and was happy. So the photograph is for you. The medallions they're wearing also came out in my luggage. And the embosser we used to imprint the seal of the college was in my luggage. That came in my hand luggage, and 2 medallions so that the president and vice president had them. Usually in Liberia, when you graduate, you pay an awful lot of money. You get almost nothing except for your diploma, and the rest of the money is eaten by the school for their own expenses. This school used all the money for things for the graduates. So they have a medallion, heavy, metallic medallion, 2-sided, with the college seal the information on the medallion. They have their diplomas. Right, these are covers. The diplomas they weren't getting yet until they turned the gowns back in. And that's what happened in Liberia. Questions? You have 1 minute. Yes, sir.
You said China's doing the roads. What's their input in that country?
China's doing it because it's part of their Belt and Road mission to basically link up cities all over the world. And they're doing the roads they were building were better than any road I'd ever seen in Liberia. They were phenomenal roads. And they have Chinese engineers with every crew, usually just 2 Chinese guys, and then everybody else are Liberians. 2 very unhappy Chinese guys sweating it out in the sunshine. But they're getting paid more than they would if they were working in China. Another question?
Do they have an accreditation program for the high school? You talked about the high school kind of handing out.
Well, the high schools, when the Civil War started, about 1990, and broken eventually into 4 parts, lasted 14 years, all education ended, all formal education ended in the country. Then education started up again, almost always private, but with so-called public oversight. But the reality is there's almost no oversight, and if you have enough money, you can graduate. And as a result of that, people are graduating with high school diplomas that can't read.
Kind of multi-step back. How Christian is Liberia? I mean, are there churches in every corner? Is this it's here? And then, second question.
You want me to judge Christianity? Okay, go ahead. Second question, do that one first.
How many graduates come out of the program each year? And then are they all like dispersing and starting a brand new church in villages and towns all over? Or are they going back to home churches? Or what's that like?
First part of the question. I was amazed by the number of churches that no longer had pastors that 20 years ago were pastored. Pastors are dying. First, because of the war. Second, because of disease and age. And when all the schooling system shut down, new pastors were not being trained because there was no way to train them other than informally. When Jake College started up, it was 3 students and they were offering an associate's degree. They eventually got up to the level of a diploma, and just this past year, they had received formal permission to finally grant their bachelor's degrees. And that took them 14 years. So the nature of education has been destroyed by the war and the consequences of the war. Imagine Michigan if for 16 years there was no public education or private education in the state of Michigan, and then you were wondering why students that were being admitted to Granville High School or Wyoming public schools couldn't read. Well, they hadn't been in school for 16 years. The reason they weren't in school was at any one time up to 25 to 30% of the population were refugees. And when the war broke into 4 parts, you almost had to leave the country to be safe because anywhere you went, you were just walking towards another army. And war became, I don't think Liberia will have another civil war as long as people are alive who can remember it or who can remember what their parents told them. I had to be very careful. What I would have used as examples in the past, I could not use as examples. I could not talk about diversity of tribal groups unless I spoke in extremely general terms because the war broke down into tribal wars and they lost at least 10% of their population estimated to war death, which would be, in our country, the equivalent of 30 million people. So that's how it destroyed the educational system. Now, the second part of your question, many of the graduates are already teaching. Some are going into pastorates or are starting churches, but a great deal of them are assuming responsibilities for 1 to 3 churches because there are no other pastors. Pastors Upcountry had 3 requests. They wanted buildings, they wanted a well, there was no water. They're up on a ridge and water was a long ways away, potable water. And they wanted to re-roof a building that had never really been used as a radio station that got destroyed in the war. And I said, well, why do you want to re-roof the radio station building? Well, we could use it for faculty offices. I said, the people in Monrovia don't have faculty offices. Why do you get faculty offices? Well, it's a nice building. If it was re-roofed, it would be wonderful, except it's going to cost them about $10,000 to do that building. But they could not shake the idea that maybe drinkable water was more important than a new refurbished building. So we went from water, building. They finally settled on building and sent me a price list for the building. And I said, but you don't have water. Well, we think we can do something. So I'm asking the people on site, can they fix the existing water system? And they said, no, because none of them understand what it's for, so they don't understand how to repair it, and they don't have the plumbers that understand the hydraulics of using a water tower, pumping water up to the water tower to get water going through your faucets on all these buildings. And they said, and finally the last thing came down, the student housing needs new roofs. That's more important than nice faculty offices for the faculty that have houses that already have good roofs, so they can study at home. They don't need this. So it was a question of, we know what you want, it's not what you need. I actually have pages in here. I did this up country. I took my book, I wrote want, need. We filled up all the wants on both pages, then we went back to needs. And my list of needs and their wants rarely agreed. I said, so, usually I would ask the question this way, what's more important, water or a new roof? Well, water. I said, well, then why are you asking for the roof? The reasoning is, if we ask for the roof and the water, we'll get both. Then I said, do you have somebody in the United States that has all this money that can send it to you? No. I said, neither do I. The church that we helped do their ceiling, the second half of the thank you service was a request to send more money. So I sat down with John, the driver, and John Saki, the assistant pastor, and I said, what's going on in the congregation? Why is the pastor 45 minutes late for a service that's being held in his backyard? Well, that's been going on for a while now, Tim. Then why is he still the pastor? Well, what are you saying? I said, it sounds like you have a problem. The last thing you need is money. You need to make a decision. Well, what we need are more deacons. Yeah, I noticed. I was introduced to these deacons at the baccalaureate service. Yes, 2 are semi-invalid and 1 is healthy. So 1 man is doing the work of 3. No one else wants to take the responsibility because they're afraid they're going to get stuck with all the work like the one guy does. And I said, well, you need to get 2 more deacons now. Give the other deacons titles of emeritus or something. Give them, don't make anyone lose face because you're removing their sense of responsibility, even though they can't function. Do something with them, but get new deacons. And then have your deacons sit down with your senior pastor and figure out what's going on. This is not going to work. Number 1 rule in Liberia, do not interrupt a person's way for making an income. If he's receiving money from outside, but he doesn't actually do anything, but he still gets the money, what's the worst thing you can do? Write a letter to the state saying the man's a charlatan. Because that's what's feeding his family. So integrity is a major issue. Of the graduates that are graduating, some have children out of wedlock. They straightened up their lives. Their churches reported that they had resolved what needed to be resolved in their life, and then they continued on and became teachers and or faculty members. And those teachers that have children out of wedlock are going to be wonderful teachers when their students say, well, we'd like to do the following, and they'll say, well, I did that. This is how long it ruined my life. Would you like to do it that way? They have far more credibility than someone who says, well, you shouldn't do that because the Bible says that. It's not that bad things make you a better teacher, but it can provide you with experiences that you can explain life differently.
If the financial aid from the West, let's say the United States, would stop, do you think that the churches would kind of...
All the churches that I saw that were existing before the war existed through the war without any outside financing. which is why I usually tell people that when you're trying to help an organization or a program, you help what will help the program to sustain itself. You don't help the program to fly without any other help. So they need a curriculum of early reading material. Why? Because they're discovering that they have brand new students that are adults who can't read, but they're high school graduates. They have a document from the government that says, I'm a high school graduate. Admit me to your program. Here's my testimony from my pastor. Here's the testimony from church members. All my life is clean. I want to come and be part of your program. But you can't read. Minor detail. So you have to, what do you do? First, you have to help the people that have clean lives, that have an upstanding testimony, want to read, but have never been taught how to read. So imagine him going through school for 12 years. I don't know how he did it. He memorized, or his exams were paid for. We don't know. We can't presume to know what's in the situation. But we also know that as United States test scores went down as a result of COVID, when people are getting taught by distant learning, if at all test scores went way down. Well, that was for a few years. Imagine it for 14 years. You take out a generation or two. So they're rebuilding. The libraries that are in both of these programs were books that were sent out in the 80s, 70s, 60s, and 50s. I went through part of Jake's library and recognized whose books they were. They were the missionary who started the program in the 80s when he decided that the school we need to have a bachelor's level program. So he donated his personal library. I would guesstimate that 70% of the books in their library are unreadable by most of their students. And they might be unreadable to you. If I brought them into you and you weren't used to reading a commentary written in the 1700s about the King James translation, I challenge you to read one of those. Go to Baker Bookhouse, go to Used Books, go buy a Matthew Henry commentary, and make it as your bedtime reading. And I dare you to read more than one page a night, because one page will probably knock you out. It's hard, and that's what they have. Those were the books that was available. When I bring out books, I always bring out newer translations, plain English commentaries, or the equivalent of an Ivy University Press commentary set, because the other material is helpful but unusable. So one of the things I have to do, I've been asked by people who know me to come talk about this school in Liberia, and I said, fine. Everything I'm going to tell you without any materials, because college hasn't sent me anything. The communication issues are still an issue. And finally, I just said, look, you have people in your faculty who can write. Let them do the writing. We still have a problem, and the problem is it's very difficult for missionaries to let go. Not because they aren't letting go. I'm watching missionaries subordinate themselves to Liberian authority. They're working under a Liberian president and executive vice president. They're working under a Liberian board, and they're doing so magnificently. They're doing something that a previous generation of missionaries never did. I asked the man who founded Baptist College Church Ministries, how are you going to nationalize this project? And his answer was, when I retire, I'll hand them my keys, and they'll continue where I've left off. And I said, well, why don't you work 2 years as academic dean under a new president? Oh, that would never work, Tim. They're Liberians. They don't work like I do. And I said, I know that. You were raised in the Netherlands. You came to the States as a teenager. I understand that. But so what? It's not the Netherlands here, and it's not America. It's Liberia. Why aren't you training the people to replace you? That just doesn't work, Tim. You don't understand. And that was his philosophy. And when the school closed, the men who were left became the administrators and became the professors because no one else was there to do it. And then eventually, missionaries joined them and helped them in that effort. So the question is, do you say, grow up on your own, or do you say, we're going to help you learn how to walk and help you teach somebody else how to walk, and then we're going to get out of your way? Right now, we're at the helping stage because they lost. Well, I taught a course in civics last time I went. I told the students, I said, you are to be congratulated. You are citizens of a country that has done something that no country in the entire continent of Africa has ever done. What did we do? I said, you have had 3 peaceful transitions of power in the last 15 years. No country in Africa has ever done this. You've changed presidents, presidential parties, you've changed everything 3 times. No wars. Nowhere in this entire continent. Africa's a small place. To fly from West Africa to East Africa takes 8 hours. To fly from West Africa to New York City takes 8 hours. To fly from the northern part of Africa to the southern part of Africa, that's 10 or 11 hours. Africa's huge. But in all that space, only one country has had 3 peaceful transitions of power in 15 years. That's Liberia. It's a pretty interesting place. Joel should go sometime and show it to Katie. I'm done. I turned it off.
Sam, do you want to close in prayer? Or
Gracious Heavenly